Welcome to this week's lecture. This lecture focuses on the area of accessibility. Now, accessibility is a practice that ensures our products are easy to use for every potential user. This means considering users with visual, hearing, physical or cognitive impairments. Therefore, it's imperative to consider the use of devices such as screen readers, braille printers and other things like these when designing and implementing our products. However, not only does it cover these users, it also covers other users who do not have these impairments but may be in situations that impair their use of the product. For example, a loud environment, the lack of a certain input device, a power user who prefers a keyboard over a mouse, or a slow network. Don't make the big mistake of thinking accessibility is only about visual design. It's not. It's about how users interact with your product and its content as well. As a concept, accessibility is more important than ever. More and more people are connecting to the internet and are doing so in so many new ways. In some ways, everyone is in some sort of niche. Tablet users, mobile phone users, things like responsive design cater for these niches. Accessibility caters for others. Responsive web design, as an example, cares about different devices. Accessibility cares about the users. So the objective of this lecture is to make sure that you're well versed in accessibility of user interfaces and factors to consider when designing for all the different groups of users. So to do that, this is the outline of what we'll be covering today. As you can see, there are a number of different aspects of accessibility which we need to go through. As usual, we have our online resources. These are really important for you. These short video lectures are good, but they won't give you everything that you need to get a really good mark in this module. To ensure that your coursework is really up to scratch, we recommend that you read these thoroughly. So moving on to accessibility itself. The current situation is that most websites or applications have some form of barrier that makes it difficult or impossible for a lot of people with disabilities to use the web. Here's a really interesting example. SIGGRAPH.org is the website for the world's largest computer graphics conference, and therefore it needs to be visually striking, and it is. However, along the way, the aesthetic design has overtaken accessibility in importance, leaving some users completely stranded. This is a huge problem. Our obsession with new trends in design and development means that we often forget the older but hugely important ones. So here is an up-close screenshot of the SIGGRAPH website. So there are a number of different problems here. Some are more obvious than others. Note the dark blue text on the dark background. Very difficult for me or you or the average user to read, but it's nearly impossible for someone with a visual impairment. Further examination shows some other problems. For example, that dark blob that you see in the white at the bottom of the image in the center is not part of the image, it's actually navigation. You just can't see it on a white background. It's fine when the image is dark. On a white background, it goes basically invisible. Lack of properties for screen readers. A key one is the alt property in images. Screen readers can't read out what an image shows. It can only read out what you specify the image describes. The website that we can see here, it's responsive, it works across devices, but it has heavy reliance on images. If you're on a GPRS network, an Edge network on your mobile phone, you have to load 2.5 megabytes of images to be able to read this website. That is going to take an eternity. So all these things are concepts that we have to be aware of when designing our products for accessibility. But why is accessibility so important to us? Well, to be honest, it's just a matter of ethics. By ignoring certain users, we're marginalising from the web, and on a larger scale from society as a whole as it becomes more and more connected. Disabilities in the physical world should not limit a user's experience of the virtual one. Another aspect, which is less to do with ethics, is that of online businesses. Lack of accessibility means a downturn of profit, a downturn in users. They're losing potential customers, as well as risking not only bad publicity, but sometimes, in some cases, legal action as well. So, a business case shows that websites and apps designed with accessibility at the core tend to be more usable by all users. But why is that? It's because, very simply, when we consider all of our potential users, we can design from the ground up with them at the core. User-centric design means a higher likelihood of a high-quality, usable interface between our product and the user. So how do we design an inclusive interface, an interface that appeals to everybody and that is usable by everybody? We have to consider the things that are displayed in the slide: visual disability, learning, physical, ageing populations, people with low literacy. All these things also consider, as we've mentioned before, mobile networks. At the moment there's very high mobile internet usage in LEDCs. Africa in particular has showed a high proportion of internet connections with low-end smartphone devices. Basic things to consider then for designing these. As you have no doubt heard over and over again, maybe in other lectures or modules in Loughborough University, maybe in general life itself, easy to use is not an acceptable requirement. So why should it be acceptable in the designs? We need to break it down into tiny details to serve the largest possible pool of end users. We need to consider each and every part of our interface, every little component, every form, every text field, everything. The one thing that we leave out could be the deal breaker for a certain demographic of users. So, in order to sort of encompass this, to give us a better idea of how to work with it, look up established UI design guidelines. Companies such as Apple, Google, who lead the way in development and interface design, have massive repositories online of HCI and UX guidelines. Think of the small details that have been introduced over the past few years. Gesture-based interfaces, it's a massive thing, but when you think about it, you don't think, oh, this is massive. It's just something that we've suddenly adapted to with our tablet computers, our smartphones. The bounce back of a screen when you reach the end of a photo album, or a list. Think about contextual navigation. When you go to a website and you scroll down, some websites are incorporating navigation which is relevant only to the certain page that you're on. Think also of things like Apple VoiceOver. For the first time in 2009, with the release of the iPhone, a blind person could walk into a shop and buy a phone that spoke the details of the interface to its user. So, to finish off our lecture this week, I'm going to leave you again with our in-class practical task. Have a look at these websites, run through each of the accessibilities, and just have a bit of fun when doing it. I'll see you next week.